Welcome into the Cinema Literature Podcast. This is episode 3. Here's what happened this week in the movie/TV world. Shonda Rhimes and her company Shondaland, they're moving from ABC to Netflix, which is probably the biggest news out of the TV world this week. I found it interesting she was giving up such a large audience in order to go to Netflix because she's basically a staple on Thursday nights at ABC. But she could be yearning for more creative control because there aren't a lot of things you can't put on network television, especially like the main broadcast networks like ABC or NBC or something like that. But she could be looking for more darker, more mature storytelling. It was also reported that she will be paid $10 million per year with Netflix. I'm not sure if that's a raise or if that's... I would think it would be a cut, to be honest, because with all her shows over at ABC, she probably gets paid buku bucks. But it also continues Netflix's effort, along with their recent purchase of Miller World, in order to have more owned programming, because a lot of their hit shows like Orange is the New Black or House of Cards or those Marvel TV shows, they aren't owned by Netflix. They're actually produced by separate companies. They're not produced by Netflix. Netflix is just a glorified distributor. The only real hit they own is Stranger Things. But also, a great thing about bringing Shonda Rhimes to Netflix is she is a ratings magnet on ABC. Grey's Anatomy and Scandal both average around 8 to 9 million viewers per year over the last 3 years. How to Get Away with Murder averaged around 5 million viewers last year, although that show has been falling consistently since the first season. Averaged almost 10 million viewers. But I think there are two main questions to ask about this movement of Shondaland and Netflix is how many Shondaland viewers already have Netflix, and of those who don't have it, how many will subscribe to Netflix because Shonda Rhimes is going there. I mean, I know she has a lot of female viewers. I personally have never met a male viewer that has been going crazy about How to Get Away with Murder or Scandal or Grey's Anatomy. I'm sure there's a male audience out there for those shows, but I'm curious how many already have Netflix, and then how many will make it a point to pay that $11.99 to go and subscribe because of Shonda Rhimes. The Hollywood Reporter reported that Hollywood faces a 15% decline in ticket revenue for the summer movie season from last year. And the bad part about that was last year was a pretty bad summer anyways for box office receipts and overall quality of movies. There are multiple factors for this. Less people are going to the movie theater because ticket prices keep getting higher and higher, and audiences are getting franchise fatigue. They're sick and tired of seeing new huge blockbusters every week. So some examples from this summer were The Mummy, which lost like $95 million. Dark Tower, which wasn't even that big of a movie. It only cost like $60 million, but it's probably going to lose money. And War for the Planet of the Apes. And War for the Planet of the Apes was a very well-reviewed movie, but I think people were just sick of seeing these tentpole movies. And that's going to end up losing money. I don't even think it's made $300 million. And it's budgeted at $150 million. There's a lack of original films coming out. There's a lack of original and refreshing films. There's not a lot of innovating larger films that get wide release dates or wide distributions. And people are willing to wait for a movie to come out on streaming. I don't know how many times I hear from people, I'll wait till it's on Netflix, or I'll wait till it's on Amazon, or even the rare people that say, I'll wait till it comes out on DVD and buy it on DVD. Quote from the article, year-to-date domestic revenue is down roughly 4%. The good news is that the international box office is up nearly 4%, putting global revenue ahead of last year by 1.5%. And this is just the latest sign of the international box office taking over, because franchises like Pirates of the Caribbean, Transformers, the Da Vinci Code, Robert Langdon franchise, with the Da Vinci Code, Inferno, Angels and Demons, the only reason those franchises still exist is because they make tons of money overseas. Their domestic grosses keep going down year by year, but their international grosses keep going up. However, Transformers might be in a little trouble because the international box office did not really save them this year. I mean, it kind of saved them because they're not going to lose $100 million. They'll probably still make a little bit of money, but after making $1 billion for the last two films, this Transformers: The Last Night has barely, I think it's at $600 million on a budget of $250 million. So eventually, and I think the reason why people aren't interested in these films, because a lot of these films aren't really geared towards domestic audiences anymore. They are trying to include everyone in the world, and when you're trying to please everyone, you're not gonna make a great product, because it's not gonna be unique. It's just gonna try and play to everyone, and it's gonna come across super generic. So this 15% decline in ticket revenue, it's not surprising considering rising ticket prices, streaming services, the amount of franchise fatigue, and the growth of the international box office. Speaking of ticket prices, Moviepass lowered their monthly subscription price from $29.99 to $9.95 a month. Basically, Moviepass is a company where you can see any movie anytime as long as it's 2D. That means you can't see 3D or IMAX. And you can see one movie every 24 hours. And you only pay $9.95 a month. And basically what happens is you go to the theater, you get like the Moviepass app, and you select what showtime you're going to see at what theater. Moviepass gives you a card, so they'll load your card with the ticket price of what it will be at that movie theater, and then you go to the kiosk or you go to the box office person, and they'll scan it. Then you get your ticket. And when it was $30 a month, it was only for like those people that really go to the movies. It's a fantastic deal, but the question is, will theaters go for it? In 2016, the average ticket price in the United States was $8.65. And nearly double that in some major U.S. cities. That's a quote from the article. But it's like, will they go for that? Because I know the movie theaters I go to, I normally go to like a Regal Cinemas, and I'm a college student. With a student discount, it's still like $11 to go see a movie. So I don't go see movies that often. I mean, I try to, because I love seeing movies, but I go more than the average moviegoer. But I don't. I wish I could go to more. Tickets are way too expensive. AMC Theaters has already threatened legal action against Moviepass, which is interesting because basically the idea is Moviepass subsidizes the tickets for customers. They pay, like the theater gets their money, just the customers don't have to pay that much. So let's say the ticket price was $10 and I was going to go see 5 movies in a month, and I have a Moviepass card. I only pay that $10, but the other $40 Moviepass will pay on my behalf to the theater, which means Moviepass loses money. So it's one of those things. Does AMC, the reason they're threatening legal action is because, well, how is this a sustainable business model for Moviepass? And if it isn't, could that hurt customer relations at movie theaters? It's just something to look forward to. It's just, how is that company model sustainable? Because I've read this is kind of a last-ditch effort for Moviepass in order to get more subscribers, but supposedly it's working because their site has crashed, their app has crashed because so many more people are subscribing. I've subscribed, so I'll let you know how my experience goes with Moviepass. I should get my card in like the next week, but it's a great deal. It's a great value. More people will go to the movie theater. That's definitely, you probably, if this thing works, you won't hear as many people saying, oh, I'll wait for it on Netflix or I'll wait for it on whatever, because $10 a month, and you could see $70 worth of movies for $10 a month. That's a pretty great deal. I am curious to see how Moviepass expects to make their money, because they're going to lose money on a lot of customers for people who see more than one movie a month. But I figure, are they trying to make up that money with ad revenue? Do they expect the deal to be so popular that they will have so many subscribers that studios will have to just put ads for their movies on their app because so many people use their app? And, do they expect to make up that difference with ad revenue? Now, the app Moviepass actually works a lot like the Flickster app. So I'm kind of curious, like, will there be some competition there with that, just looking up showtimes and everything? But it shouldn't be, because the only way you can get your deals and like sign up for your showtimes is through the Moviepass app. But Moviepass, I know they use like Rotten Tomatoes and stuff like Flickster does, but I don't know. It'll be interesting. It's definitely if it works, it could be revolutionary, like these streaming services. So it's something to keep an eye on. Captain Marvel got a new screenwriter with Gotham City Sirens writer Geneva Robertson Dwore. The original screenwriters for Captain Marvel were Nicole Perlman and Meg LaFave. Nicole Perlman was actually part of the Marvel writing program. She wrote the initial draft of Guardians of the Galaxy, and Meg LaFave co-wrote Inside Out. LaFave actually left the project a little bit ago to co-direct the Disney animation movie Gigantic, which has actually had its own production problems because it's been delayed 2 years. It was supposed to come out November of next year, but now it's not going to come out until November of 2020. But this new writer, Robertson Dore, made the Hollywood Blacklist, which is the list of the best unproduced screenplays in Hollywood. She actually made that list twice, and she actually has a number of projects in the works. She wrote the upcoming Tomb Raider reboot, which stars Alicia Vikander, and she's writing Gotham City Sirens, which might be directed by David Ayer. I think it's a good choice to bring her on. I'm kind of bummed that Meg LaFave isn't co-writing the movie anymore because Inside Out was amazing. But, she's doing another Disney movie, so, she's getting work still. But this is a good choice. It's always nice to bring in talent. I just hope it doesn't feel disjointed among movies, but with Marvel's track record, whenever they bring in additional writers, it seems to enhance the movie, make it even better. Well, here's some good news if you liked Baby Driver, or for any fans of Baby Driver. The Edgar Wright-directed Baby Driver crossed $100 million domestically this past week, which is a fantastic sign for original films and the director, Edgar Wright, who is going to get more projects greenlit, more American projects greenlit, because of this movie's performance. Personally, I didn't even think it would do well. I was going to see it, but I didn't think it was going to do that well. It had a budget of $34 million in the heart of summer, 1 week after Transformers came out, and it's rated R. $34 million budget, I think it's up to $168 million total. And if you compare that to Edgar Wright's last mostly American film, which was Scott Pilgrim versus the World, which had a net budget of $60 million and it only made $47 million. And it lost the studio quite a bit of money. But now, there are even talks about possibly making a second Baby Driver. I kind of hope that doesn't happen. But, if Edgar Wright says, hey, I never make sequels, but I might make a Baby Driver 2. I would watch a Baby Driver 2 if it was directed and written by Edgar Wright. But it's definitely a great sign for original films. And, hopefully that tells studios, hey, not any one of your movies that you put a lot of money in has to be this something based on IP or it's a sequel to something else. You can make a good original movie and it can be very profitable for you. Turns out Samuel L. Jackson's Nick Fury will not be in Avengers Infinity War, nor will he be in Avengers 4. And Sam Jackson is pretty upset about it, but it seems to make perfect sense. What is Nick Fury going to do against Thanos and, all those intergalactic beings? What is he really going to do? Plus, there are already 40 to 50 characters in the movie, and his role in I think his last movie was in Avengers Age of Ultron. His role was minimal at best. All he did was give a pep talk to all the guys, hey, you guys got to save the world, And then, they basically had this set up he's going to do something daring and surprising. He just had this set up to come in with the helicarrier to rescue everybody off of the floating country of Sokovia. So, I think Sam Jackson's just upset about it because he just won't be getting paid and he's not going to further his box office Guinness World Record with the Avengers Infinity War, Avengers 4. But, whatever. He's not going to be in it. It's not a big deal because people aren't going to see that movie to see Nick Fury. While doing press for Logan Lucky, Daniel Craig revealed on the Late Show with Stephen Colbert that he will return for Bond 25 on November 8th, 2019. So he will be back as James Bond. And I'm kind of mixed about this because Craig's going to be 50 when he films the movie. And the oldest Bond was Roger Moore when he was 57. He filmed A View to a Kill. But it does seem like he's a little old for it. But the good news is that his series with Bond could end on a high note because each movie has been on and off. Casino Royale was really good. Quantum of Solace was meh. Skyfall was excellent. And then Spectre was kind of a disaster. I think Spectre by far was the worst Daniel Craig movie. I think it was worse than Quantum because, one, it was 40 minutes longer than Quantum. Quantum of Solace might not have been that good, but at least it had the wherewithal to be only an hour and 45 minutes, while Spectre was 2.5 hours. And also, Quantum of Solace did wrap up Casino Royale's story in a pretty satisfying way. Spectre tried to play this whole it's all connected type of game, and they made like a Roger Moore type of Bond movie. They made like a conventional Bond movie. It had all this glitz and glam and stuff, and it was really ridiculous at times, and it was just, at times it was boring. It seemed, it started with that amazing opening sequence, and it literally just went downhill from there, and there were no redeeming moments from that. And I think Quantum of Solace had a good story, but the execution was poor, whereas Spectre didn't really have a great story, and the execution was poor on top of that. And at least Quantum of Solace tried to be more realistic, like Casino Royale. Bond works best when the glitz and glamour are like the flourishes in realistic movies. That's when it's a realistic movie, and then occasionally there will be this like moment or this flourish that reminds you of classic Bond movies. You don't want a classic Bond movie because that's too over the top. But all in all, I'm interested. November 8th, 2019 is when the next Bond movie will come out. I'll probably be there because I think Daniel Craig is a really good Bond, but we'll see. For any fans of Wonder Woman, I know I really liked Wonder Woman this summer. Patty Jenkins is in final talks to direct Wonder Woman 2 for quite a lot of money. It is rumored that she was only paid around $1.5 to $3 million for the first Wonder Woman film, but her next deal, because she wasn't signed on for a second movie, her next deal could be like a Zack Snyder deal. She could get paid around $10 million plus 10% cash break even. It's a very smart move for DC because she has directed the best DCEU movie hands down. Wonder Woman is the best DCEU movie. I mean, the only thing that comes close, and it really doesn't come that close, is Man of Steel. I thought Man of Steel was a really good movie for 2/3, and then the third act just fell apart. And while Wonder Woman, the third act isn't as strong as the first two acts, the movie definitely did not fall apart in the third act. It just wasn't as good as the first two acts. I wonder, kind of, does this mean she will have more of an impact on the entire DC Extended Universe, on that entire film series? We'll see. But I think this is a good sign for future female directors or up-and-coming female directors. Like, hey, you can get paid as much as any other director. It doesn't matter as long as you make quality films. Another little side note, though, is that Marvel originally hired Patty Jenkins to direct Thor: The Dark World, but then Patty Jenkins later signed off. She later departed because of creative differences, and so Marvel decided to select Alan Taylor instead, who's a Game of Thrones director. He directed a few episodes of Game of Thrones, and Thor: The Dark World is easily Marvel's weakest movie in their Marvel Cinematic Universe, and Alan Taylor ended up going on to direct Terminator Genesis, which sucks as well. But I think that's interesting that DC later picked up Patty Jenkins and Marvel just whiffed, which is a classic role reversal because, DC's been whiffing. DC has been whiffing recently, and Marvel's been hitting it. But that's one situation where it's flipped. Star Wars Obi-Wan Kenobi standalone movie is officially in the works. This is something that has been talked about ever since Disney announced that there were going to be standalone movies. People have talked about an Obi-Wan Kenobi standalone movie that takes place in between Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, and Episode 4, New Hope. Because I guess there have been countless comic books and storylines about Obi-Wan Kenobi protecting a young Luke on Tatooine. And Ewan McGregor has been interviewed about it, and he's expressed a ton of enthusiasm about returning to the role of Obi-Wan Kenobi. And so far, everything is in the early stages. There's no script. They're supposedly in early talks with director Stephen Daldry, who directed The Reader and The Hours. He's a very prolific theater director. And I think Ewan McGregor just wants to redeem what the prequels were. Because I think Ewan McGregor is a very good actor, but I think when you have a director like George Lucas for those prequels, who literally was telling people to be as monotone and as robotic as possible, you're not going to have a good product. And I think Disney and Lucasfilm are trying to, the reason they're doing these standalone movies is so that new fans to the series don't have to watch the prequels to understand what's going on. And literally they're just like, just use the standalone stories as the prequels. I think that's what they want to do. But supposedly Lucasfilm was also exploring a Yoda and Boba Fett standalone movie. Yoda standalone movie and a Boba Fett standalone movie. And I don't want to see a Yoda standalone movie because the special thing about Yoda is all the mystery behind him, and I don't need to know where Yoda came from. However, the Boba Fett movie, there were rumors that the Boba Fett movie was going to be like a Magnificent Seven or like a Dirty Dozen type of movie where, it's like they're mercenaries, bad guys basically hired to kill worse guys. And I feel like that could be super interesting if you made like an actual good Suicide Squad movie with, Boba Fett and a bunch of other mercenaries. But Star Wars Obi-Wan Kenobi standalone movie is definitely something I want to see. I'd like to see Ewan McGregor, be well directed and kind of have more control, because I think he's a really talented actor, and I think he would definitely do Obi-Wan Kenobi better justice than he did in the prequels. There were a lot of trailers that came out this week, but I want to talk about two in particular. The first one is Molly's Game, which comes out November 22nd, 2017, starring Jessica Chastain, Idris Elba, Kevin Costner, Chris O'Dowd, and Michael Cera. The synopsis is Molly's Game is the true story of Molly Bloom, a beautiful young Olympic-class skier who ran the world's most exclusive high-stakes poker game for a decade before being arrested in the middle of the night by 17 FBI agents wielding automatic weapons. Her players included Hollywood royalty, sports stars, business titans, and finally, unbeknownst to her, the Russian mob. Her only ally was her criminal defense lawyer, Charlie Jaffe, who learned that there was much more to Molly than the tabloids led us to believe. I'm super interested in this movie because this is Aaron Sorkin's directorial debut. But the trailer kind of has the feel of a David Fincher movie, which makes sense because one of the movies where Aaron Sorkin had the most influence was actually The Social Network, which he wrote the script for, won an Academy Award for, and David Fincher directed that movie. It looks really good. It comes out in November, so it's got a very Oscar-baity release. Jessica Chastain, she looks like she's going to kill it in the role. I'm glad Idris Elba is basically co-starring with her as her defense lawyer. She looks great. She's wearing pretty skimpy clothes. But my one issue with Jessica Chastain is I hope she doesn't come and badmouth this movie because she's wearing skimpy clothes or anything, because recently she's only been taking roles where she plays some type of badass person, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But some of the movies she's been in haven't been very good. I know she took that Huntsman sequel. She took that role because she was playing this female warrior, but it was a crappy movie. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. Molly's Game, it looks pretty interesting. I definitely want to see that no matter what, just to see how Aaron Sorkin does in his debut. I kind of hope it's not like The Newsroom, where he was kind of a showrunner on that and he had way more creative control. Because Newsroom was, one, you could see the political bias, and it was one of the few series or works that you could literally say, wow, it's kind of overwritten, because every line of dialogue is some kind of this snappy quip or this super cynical remark or anything. It's almost too smart for its own good. But another trailer released for the Meyerowitz stories, which comes out October 13th on Netflix, it looks like a family melodrama type of movie, but it's starring Ben Stiller, Adam Sandler, Dustin Hoffman, and Emma Thompson. And so far it's gotten really great reviews with a lot of critics praising Adam Sandler's performance. It has an 88% on Rotten Tomatoes and a 77 on Metacritic. I'm not jonesing to see this, but it definitely has me intrigued with the reviews and the fact that Adam Sandler seems to turn in a great performance, because he's made a lot of terrible movies, and I think people don't like Adam Sandler because he's made these terrible movies, but it's also because they know he is talented, he can act. I remember seeing Rain on Me when I was 13 or 14, and I almost couldn't believe it was Adam Sandler in that movie because he was actually really good in it. I want to talk for a moment about review aggregators, specifically Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic. You'll hear me, when I mention certain movies, you'll hear me mention what their score is on Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic. I just want to say that I use Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic to decide which movies I would pay for a ticket at the movie theater to go see, not necessarily which movies I would watch, period. If a movie has a crappy score on Rotten Tomatoes, I'm not going to pay $10, $11 to go see it at the movie theater. But let's say it has a 98%, I'm going to be more inclined to pay that money when I go to the movie theater. But I think both are great tools to use, especially to help moviegoers decide which movies to see, because I think good movies will overperform and bad movies will underperform because of these review aggregators. And I think the only people within the industry that complain about the review aggregators are the ones that make terrible movies. I remember Brett Ratner complained about, Rotten Tomatoes, and it's like, well, Brett Ratner kind of directs crappy movies, with the exception of, I do like Rush Hour 1 and 2. But I know when The Lone Ranger came out, that got destroyed, and literally everyone in that movie, Johnny Depp, Armie Hammer, all of them complained about the reviews. And like this summer, I know Wonder Woman was tracking for like a $65-70 million weekend, and then the reviews came out and it was like a 96%, and it made $100 million opening weekend. And I know the Mummy was tracking, I think the Mummy was tracking for like a $50 million opening weekend, and I think it actually hit that, but then the second weekend it dropped like 60%. But with Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic, Rotten Tomatoes can be it can be misleading occasionally how good a movie is, because it really, in order to get a positive review, the movie only has to be a 6 out of 10. So then it gets a positive review. While Metacritic is like, it's just one score. But I like Metacritic because Metacritic is kind of like the great equalizer. Like Spider-Man Homecoming and La La Land both have a 93% on Rotten Tomatoes. But if you look at Metacritic, Spider-Man Homecoming has a 73, while La La Land has a 93. So Metacritic Metacritic will really tell you like which one is more critically acclaimed than the other. But when I look at movies, I like to judge movies on two different scales. You kind of judge it for what the movie is or what the movie is trying to be, and then you judge it against like all other movies. So if I were to take a movie like, let's say, Wonder Woman, and I say, Wonder Woman for what the movie is, for what the movie is trying to be, Wonder Woman's probably an 8 out of 10. But if I judge it against all of the movies where, The Godfather and Lord of the Rings are 10s, well, then Wonder Woman's probably like a 6.5 or a 7, because it's being judged against those great movies. So before I sign off, I want to make a couple recommendations for movies that you should probably see if you haven't seen them yet. And the first one is Ghost Town, which came out in 2008. Ghost Town is about a dentist who's played by Ricky Gervais, who goes in for a routine colonoscopy, but he decides to go under anesthesia. And while under anesthesia, he dies and comes back to life. And he ends up seeing all these ghosts around him, and they need his help to like solve their problems, their lingering issues. And he ends up dealing with a young widow's husband as well. And it's very funny. And normally, if you don't like Ricky Gervais, you'll probably like him after this movie, because it's a very sweet movie, but it's also funny, and it handles grieving in a really interesting way. That's also kind of rewarding, and it makes sense. But it's a very nice little movie. If you haven't seen it, you should really check it out. The second recommendation I want to make is The Nice Guys, which came out last year. And The Nice Guys was one of these movies that was just painfully underseen by audiences, because so it's Shane Black, who did Iron Man 3, he did Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. He also wrote Lethal Weapon. And basically it's a 70s detective movie, a noir-ish movie. But it's a detective comedy with Russell Crowe and Ryan Gosling. Again, super witty, super funny. It's just really good. Unfortunately, there's not going to be a sequel because it only made $57 million on a $50 million budget. But it was one of my top 10 movies from 2016. I mean, it was very good. There's no dragging spots at all. The jokes, it's not like joke, but it's the timing is perfect. It feels really natural. It's a very good movie. Finally, so the wide release movies this weekend were Logan Lucky and The Hitman's Bodyguard. I would recommend Logan Lucky since it has a 93% on Rotten Tomatoes and a 70 on Metacritic. And while The Hitman's Bodyguard has a 39% on Rotten Tomatoes and a 50 on Metacritic, I'm going to see Logan Lucky. Make your choice, but I would go see Logan Lucky this weekend. All right, if you want to get in touch with Cinema Literature and ask us questions about some of your favorite movies, upcoming films, or what goes into making a movie, feel free to comment on our SoundCloud page or on our website, cinemalit.weebly.com. You can also email us at cinemalit52814@gmail.com. If you want to keep up with the podcast, follow us on SoundCloud at Cinema Literature and follow us on Twitter simply at CinemaLit. Peace.